Eberline, Duncan, and Matari. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Public comment. Anybody want to speak? Hearing none. Okay, we'll go into our first business item, Justice Building Update, and we have our Director of Building and Grounds, Jeff Fuller.
Good morning, Commissioners. I don't have a lot to update this morning. As you know, we're very near completion with the grand opening this Thursday from 3 to 6 of the new building. We are working on final punch list items right now, so we're very, very close to being, 100% complete with the building. We are working on coordinating the move that will start on Monday, July 14th. We have the DeVries Moving Company that'll be coming in. Boxes are being delivered to the departments right now. So we have these big plastic storage crates you might see sitting around the campus. That's what people are going to be packing their belongings into. And then the company will come and cart them across into the new areas that they're going to be moving into. So we're very, very close. We had our last formal construction meeting yesterday with the architect and contractor team. There's just a couple people from Boughton currently on site just wrapping up the final details of the project. The architect team is currently on site right now with their photographer and their marketing team, and they're capturing a bunch of photos of the building that we'll have access to when the project is done. They're very pleased with how the building has turned out, and we use this as part of their portfolio for what they do in their services moving forward. And probably we could take this as a standing item off of the business meeting if you guys are okay with that, because we won't have a lot of updates, and we could do some periodic updates as you request, or if I have things I need to bring to you, I can put this on as an agenda item, or we could maybe do some kind of general project updates moving forward.
Thank you. Questions? I'm just curious, how big is your punch list?
For a project this size, it's not really big. The major items are all taken care of on that right now. There was a lot of touch-up paint and things like that needed to be done that you would expect on a project, and even those are pretty well wrapped up. So, they're doing some door touch-ups right now, doing some adjustments on hinges, those kinds of things. So, there'll be a few things that pop up here and there. Like I found a door today that didn't latch. So, there'll be just kind of some ongoing stuff that we're like, just little tweaks and adjustments that either my team will need to make, or we'll call, Boughton in periodically with a list to say, hey, here's a couple things that have come up that aren't working right.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yes.
So, thank you.
How about just updating us like the first Tuesday in August?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. That would be a good, how are we doing with operation as we moved into the building? And that makes a lot of sense.
Anything else? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, on to item 2, Centennial Trail deeding to Post Falls consideration. It's a discussion item, and we have Pat Braden from our Civil Division here.
Yeah, Pat Braden, Civil Deputy Prosecuting Attorney for the record. This is a continuation of an item that's been on this agenda before. And there is a new development in this, which is why I have this put back on the agenda today. I'll go up to the map and just point out, there is a legend there, but I'll point everything out to you. This parcel in pink is owned by Rose of Sharon Enterprises, as is this parcel here. This is in the city. There's a proposed subdivision here, and they would like a secondary access across the Centennial Trail through this parcel to London Boulevard. This orange parcel is Centennial Trail parcel that's owned by the city of Post Falls currently. The blue and the green parcels are Centennial Trail rights of way owned by the county. The one in green is the one that would be proposed to be transferred to the city of Post Falls. Theo Harrington, the city attorney for the city of Post Falls, has provided a memo outlining a proposal whereby the county would deed to the parcel in green to the city. The city would accept it and accept maintenance of that responsibility on that parcel. Mr. Harrington is here and can answer any questions or correct any misstatements I make. But we're submitting this. My understanding is city staff met yesterday regarding this proposal, leading to the memo that Mr. Harrington has provided. And I would just ask your consent to move forward with this if you are agreeable to this proposal.
Any questions? I have a question. I thought we talked about having the city take over all of the Centennial Trail within their city limits so that it would be one fell swoop and done.
We
This-
did. This is actually out, the parcel in blue continues on, and it is outside of Post Falls city limits.
Okay.
And the parcel in green is actually outside of the city limits, but they're willing to take it in part because it is adjacent to city limits.
What is the chance that it would be annexed in where the blue is?
That I would defer to Mr. Harrington on that one, on
Okay.
that. I don't see, my personal belief is I don't see it being annexed anytime soon, but anything can happen.
Do you want to come on up? Mr. Harrington?
I'll yield to Field.
Good morning, Commissioners. Field Harrington, City Attorney for the City of Post Falls. Yeah, at this time, I think we met as staff yesterday. Again, the proposal has not gone to City Council, so it would be going to City Council pending their acceptance of that, but we would be putting it forward with a recommendation to do that for that parcel. The property to the east, Pat's correct, as you can see from the map that I provided in my memo, the lighter coloring is city limits, whereas the gray coloring is county limits. And so the rest of the stretch, this green portion is about a half-mile portion, and there's about a mile of county portion that's bisected a little bit by the Riverbend area, and then the county has from the state line in as well. And the county owns a large piece of that property out there as well. At this time, we certainly would be inclined to take the property that is immediately adjacent to the city property. It is a natural extension of what we already have with the other bit to the east. But the sort of extension through the rest of the county property, I think we'd want to reserve that discussion when the rest of that property, if it ever develops.
Are you referring to the blue or the green or both?
I'd be referring to the blue
Okay.
that is in the county's area.
Okay. Director Snyder, do you have any comments on this? Thank you.
Nick Snyder for the record. Good morning, Commissioners. No, I think it's the right thing to do, given that the city is collecting impact fees and essentially approving this project. And the joint powers agreement stipulates that we maintain commensurate with what we've been doing the last 30 years. We have a good working relationship with City of Post Falls. They do an excellent job of trail maintenance. So from the customer standpoint, they won't really know the difference in that trail maintenance or ongoing improvements. And so I do think it makes sense in this case. And in the future, should the city continue to annex, I think it, again, makes sense to continue to discuss those potential transfers. But as of now, we're happy to continue to take care of our section until such time something changes.
How much more section do you have going, I guess, west?
Yeah, so we have about another mile and a quarter that goes to Pleasant View, and then it changes again to the city as you cross Pleasant View Avenue out to Beck Road, and then
Actually, I think that's in the ITD right away, that part.
Oh, that's true, it does dive into there. Thank you, Pat.
Then we got the area where the state line park is.
Yes, and then you're right, it does dive into ITD right away for a bit, but it's sort of a potpourri, as you know, the Centennial Trail from City of Coeur d'Alene to City of Post Falls and then county and so, et cetera. But there is another city section out there, and I do think it starts at Pleasant View and goes to Beck. So whatever that looks like in the future, we'll discuss. But again, we maintain it as a contiguous trail, and there's always some sort of overlapping between the three cities. So public shouldn't feel any change, and I appreciate the city stepping up to take this responsibility should the board support it.
Any thoughts on this?
I think it's a great idea. It's been a pain in the side since I was last a commissioner.
I would like to see the city take over the blue stretch as well, mostly because we can't collect an impact fee for these things. And, you know, the fact is that we just got notice from another city that they don't even want to collect our jail impact fee. So that, in essence, has made it, you know, null and void. So I would prefer that, and it's so close where the city is going to likely annex the land, that they consider taking that and get the county out of the business of maintaining these things when we aren't able to raise the funds to.
That'd be nice on a wish list.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mr. Harrington suggested that the city would at least consider that on the blue stretch of the trail.
Pat, you have to come to the microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, Mr. Harrington can answer too, but my understanding of what he said was that as the, you know, should the county or city annex in that area, then that they would consider it at that time.
Oh,
That's correct. If the city ever grows into that area, but most of those properties have been county properties for a very long time and are very likely to maintain that designation. I don't foresee us growing into that area in the near future.
and what about the Centennial Trail folks? That, wasn't there a committee put together on that to look at adding this right away across the trail?
Well, if you're speaking about the Joint Powers Maintenance Committee comprised of the two cities in the county, yes, we had discussed future easement requests, and unfortunately, we don't have any authority other than to make some recommendations to the respective council and the commissioners, and that is fewer is better. Fewer is better for the contiguous recreational enjoyment of the public. That's sort of the general consensus amongst that group. And that would include the North Idaho Centennial Trail Foundation, which is a 501c3 that I think most of us are aware of, also feel similar, that we certainly don't want to hack the trail up. I know this is a unique situation. Our hope is that we don't see a lot more of these unique situations. I was going to comment, I certainly understand the city's position about they haven't annexed that far, maybe someday they will, but from an efficiency of government standpoint, the city maintaining that section, they're already deployed in that area with resources. From that standpoint, it makes sense, but again, we're pleased to continue to take care of it until such time that the city and the county make some other changes.
I think it would be a larger conversation, talking about like amending that joint powers agreement or something like that. Those longer stretches of trail to the west.
Yeah, I guess the only question is with the smaller pieces, you're gonna, it's like roads, you can tell where the jurisdictions end and where they begin, because someone's maintaining road well on one area, you know you've crossed into another jurisdiction because the road's not being maintained. So how would the trail be maintained if the city takes it over?
Well,
And,
again,
and the rest of the trail?
Sure, we have a standard that we work together to maintain, and so it's very difficult to tell where the city may stop and the county starts. Again, we plan these repairs and maintenance together. As an example, the board might recall that I recently authored and we received a recreational trail program grant, and even though that repair will start on the state line and work its way eastward, it will eventually work in the city, and that is a joint effort between the city of Coeur d'Alene, city of Post Falls, and Kootenai County. So from that standpoint, commissioners, the public won't really see a difference in care.
Okay.
And commissioners, if I could just add to that, it's analogous to, you know, highway districts in this county too. You go from one, say on Prairie Avenue, from one highway district to another, you don't notice any difference, at least until you get to the part of the road that hasn't been upgraded yet, but that's another issue. But typically, you go from one highway district to another, you don't see any difference in the level of maintenance of the road, so. And part of that is because all four districts have adopted the same standards, and I think that's analogous to what Nick is saying about the standard of care for the trail between the two cities and the county.
A great example, Commissioners, is, it wasn't that long ago, I believe it was last year, right in that same area, there's a dip in the trail, and there was some problems there. It needed corrected, and the city of Post Falls, on county property, stepped up, partnered with the county, and took care of some maintenance in there, some fill, some leveling, and some stabilization of the trail system in there. So again, to that point, we work pretty well together on that, and we have since about 1997, so.
Okay. Well, it's something I've seen in other places, and it's a cheap question to ask today. Any other comments?
I'm fine going with the proposed green stretch and then having conversations later. My concern is that I don't want any more trail crossings. And so to have a private entity benefit from a trail crossing, it just doesn't sit well with me. So I prefer to let the city of Post Falls take that responsibility. And that's why I'd support the green right now today.
And that would be my ask, is just to be able to move forward on the green colored parcel now, and then, as Commissioner Duncan said, continue the conversation with respect to the rest of the trail in the West Post Falls area.
Yeah, the only problem is that it's really just death by 1,000 cuts. We get asked for these individual decisions. So it's just this development. It's just this one place we want to cross. And, it seems so innocuous at the time, but when you do 10 or 15 of them, all of a sudden the trail loses its appeal from a biker's perspective, because now you might as well be on the street, right? It's just you're constantly dealing with vehicles crossing. The question is, how many of these crossings should be allowed in a given time period? And that's the part that I think really hasn't been discussed.
So,
And I agree with you, on the private sector side, they're profiting off of their land, so that, at the expense of the trail riders.
yeah, so we don't have to have Post Falls annex this. We can just make the decision on our own that we're not going to grant the easement across the trail and just keep it. I don't necessarily know that that's the best plan of action, but that is an option.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of the trail to be taken over and just off the county's books in that sense, but it doesn't sound like it really makes any difference because of the joint partnership.
Right.
Commissioners, if I could, maybe the question's best for Pat and Field, and that is, does the city intend to move forward with the annexation with the understanding that would still be emergency access or some other sort of control devices that doesn't allow? Or I understand that by annexing it and giving it up to the city, it's beyond the county's control. I'm just curious as if the city is going to continue to maintain that position that's going to be that type of crossing.
Yeah, that would be a field question.
I am not exactly sure what the plan set was. I wasn't involved in that process, but it is my understanding that it is only for emergency access, crossing that area. I think it's also important to note that this area is actually somewhat encumbered as well, because our wastewater treatment plant is here and the pipes actually go under here and out to the outfall of the river. So it does make some sense from that standpoint, as well as we already have some encumbrances on that property and in that particular area as well.
Very sensitive ones at that.
So emergency access, that works for you?
Yep, it always has, but I didn't understand that to be Post Falls case.
Well,
I thought it was going to be at least a one-way available egress and not for emergency. So that was my understanding. That's why I was fine with going ahead with letting them be responsible if it's going to become a regular situation.
Yeah. I mean, if it's if you can assure that it's emergency access, then I think that would be a much easier decision to make.
I would have to look into that further. I don't have that answer.
Let's figure it out. I mean, it's just a discussion item. Anything else? Okay, all right, thank you. Next up, item 3, repairs for audio, video equipment. It's an action item, but I wanted to bring this up to the board's attention that we already discussed prospective invoice in the amount of roughly $700 to $800 to have this company that sold us the equipment for the video equipment for these meetings to come out, do a little bit of troubleshooting, do some training, and it looks like we actually have a couple problems with some cameras here. And it will be very inefficient to have to go through these meeting cycles to get approval. So I was going to ask if we already kind of approved up to the $800, if you would be willing to give up to $2,000. I'll work with Sarah. I'll work with the vendor. I don't want to spend $2,000, but at least that way, I have the authority to make these decisions and not come back before the board.
Yeah, it's not working. So again, like when Nick has repairs or Jeff has repairs, they don't have to come before the board. It's kind of budgeted and it's in there, so.
Well, this isn't budgeted.
I'm not sure how much was budgeted in that item, because I know that Jonathan had them out here to do some work as well. I don't know if it was this fiscal year or last, but yeah, I don't know, it needs to be fixed, and we need to have a better way to operate.
Yep,
so.
so,
I think it's prudent.
all right.
And again, it'll be paid through the payables, so Leanna can just let us know if we need to identify another funding source.
Yeah, that's fine. It wasn't budgeted, so I wanted to at least talk with the board about it. Next up is item 4, interim meeting recordings. This is a discussion. Our operator for the equipment will be gone the week of July 21 through July 25. We do not have any backup at this point to continue the recordings. So I was going to just get, Craig Davidson was kind enough to step up and do that. But, well, we have Director Callahan here.
Commissioners, I just asked that we train Jocelyn on my staff along with that so that we have some depth in case Craig was out or some other issue comes up. It's just better to have depth. Plus, it's a little awkward to have my second in command doing something that someone else could do.
Yep. And I think we have 3 meetings that week.
Just a comment. Now that we have the new laptop, we are getting good, crisp audio recordings. I don't believe we're legally required to have a YouTube. No. So if this doesn't work out, we can just have people do the audio recordings and do their minutes from those. Just
Yeah, I think from the minutes perspective, you're good. I think just from the public's
Well,
perspective.
we can also load the audio onto the website so they can listen to the audio just like they can. I'm just saying that for this as an emergency thing.
Sure. Well, I agree. I think the more people who can use the room, the better. So anyhow, that was it on that. Okay, the next one is Idaho County's Risk Management Pool Update. It's an executive session.
They have a presentation before we go into executive
All
session.
right, so we'll go ahead and, now, I guess the question is, should we do public comment first? Because if we do go into executive session.
Yeah, you can ask for public comment.
Public comment. Anyone like to speak? Hearing nothing. All right, let's go into item 5, Idaho County's Risk Management Pool Update. I have Tim Osborne, who will be leading us off.
Commissioners, does anybody ever sit in the front row in this place, or do they all sit in the back?
We've taken the second set of tables away in some meetings, so yeah, in that case.
I think it depends on the subject matter.
Yeah.
Well, I'll sit in front of you because this is a boring insurance presentation, and I want to make sure you don't gnaw it off. I only brought this on paper, but I can provide an electronic copy for you. And this is a presentation Takes me about 20, 30 minutes to get through, depending on how quickly I move through the materials. It's double-sided. That way it cut down on the amount of paper I had to bring up with me. John, you gonna come up here? And I'll start off and ask questions as you need to. Real quick, I'm Tim Osborne. I'm the executive director for ICRIMP. What's ICRIMP? ICRIMP's a public entity. It was an insurance pool, insurance program. We live a life of a public entity plus an insurance company. We were formed 40 years ago this year. We were formed based out of the fact that the insurance markets for property and liability were absolutely collapsing at that point in time. And so the counties got together and figured out, well, if we can't buy insurance, can we form our own insurance company? And that's what they did. They started ICRIMP. It's been so successful that the rest of the public entities around the state have joined in over the years. I report to a board of 10, 6 county commissioners, 2 city officials, 1 special district, and a sheriff. For District 1, your Commissioner Duncan sits on my board, so I report to her as well as the other elected officials. That's a quick recap of what ICRIMP is. What I want to cover with you is what's gone on in the marketplace over the last couple of years, because there's a lot of people asking questions over, man, the insurance has gone up, what's happening with it, what's the reasoning behind it, and without going too far down some of the rabbit holes, but giving you a broad overview of what we've experienced being in the insurance marketplace. As a member of ICRIMP, you own an insurance company, ICRIMP. So you are in the insurance business to a certain percentage, okay? So the things I want to talk about here are about what's going on in the market. Main concepts on slide 1, lines of coverage, market cycle, and reinsurance. These are 3 things that we need to make sure that we understand as I walk through this. On slide 2, this covers the lines of coverage that ICRIMP provides the public entities. It doesn't have it all-encompassing, but it kind of breaks it down between property and liability. Property insurance is obviously insurance for your fixed assets. Liability breaks down into a variety of different coverages, from general liability, auto, law enforcement, so on and so forth. But that's usually your liability coverage where you've done harm, supposedly, to a third party, and you may be liable for them, okay? The insurance market cycle works like every other market cycle. It has its ups and downs. And I know you've seen these graphs before because I've put this stuff up at some of the association conferences. But as the insurance market moves through soft and hard markets, you can see how things change. Insurers enter the market, competition increases, and they'll drive the price of your insurance down to the point where it's unsustainable. Okay, they drive that premium down. They eat each other's young to some extent. And at some point, carriers realize they can't make a profit in this business. P&C business is based off of, for every dollar that comes in the door is a dollar spent in the form of a claim. So you kind of sit there and go, well, how do you make money in a business where every dollar you bring in is a dollar you're going to spend? You make it off the investment income. And investment income, for a long period of time, hasn't been very good. And you'll see that a little bit in some of the graphs later on. But the market's changed. But as losses exceed the premiums, profits fall, and now you switch from a soft market into the hard market. Insurers exit the market, coverage becomes harder to place, and the premiums rise appropriately. And at some point, the profits will return, and the cycle starts all over again. The last thing I want to make sure you understand is reinsurance, okay? And on this slide, it shows individuals purchasing insurance from an insurance company. Insurance companies don't retain all of that coverage. They cede it to other insurance companies. They call them reinsurers, okay? And it's a spreading of risk. A long time ago, they absorbed all of those things, and insurance companies have a tendency to go under when they absorb too much risk. So they spread that risk out among reinsurers, okay? And reinsurers on an international level. So based off of those 3 concepts, flipping over, what I really want to focus today is to talk to you about property. Like I said, we do liability coverages, and you've probably heard me talk about liability coverages in the past, but property has really been the driver over a lot of the increases and the volatility in the marketplace right now. If you look at the market cycle for property, I put a big red star up there in the hard market. And that star is about where we're at in that market cycle for property. Premiums have risen sharply, as you all are probably aware of, and profits are returning to the property cycle. Let's see the next page. Next page shows a graph of average commercial property or premium increases by line of coverage. And there's a lot going on this graph, but the one line you want to look at the most is the dark blue, which is the commercial property. And you can see from this that there was a spike back in 2001, how rapidly the premiums went up at that point in time. We all know what happened in 2001. And then you can see for a long period of time after that came back down from about 2003 up to about 2017. It was a fairly flat, soft market, okay? Not a whole lot of spikes. But around 2017, 2018, the market started to change. And it changed for a couple different reasons that I'll go over. But you can see some of the volatility that has come to light, especially in the 2002, 2003 area where the premiums have really started to go up. So on the next slide, what happened? You had a prolonged soft reinsurance market. That means the pricing was very low. Reinsurers were undercutting each other over a period of time, running that price down to the point where it was unsustainable. In 2020, we had the lockdowns, we had COVID, the lockdowns and the shutdowns. In 21, we did the federal stimulus. We all know when you throw a bunch of money on a supply and demand market, what's going to happen. Everybody spends the stimulus check and it drives inflation up. At the same time, in 2022, you had developing primary and secondary cat losses, okay? Primary cat losses are things like earthquakes and hurricanes. Secondary cat losses are things like your convective storms, and I'll show you a little bit more about that. 2022, we hit an inflation of 9.1%, which is something that's been unheard of for an extended period of time. I don't know if you all remember, but there was a number of years where people would lament the fact that you couldn't get any kind of return on your savings account. And all of a sudden in 2022, your inflation goes to 9.1%. It's a very dramatic difference. 2022 also had Hurricane Ian hit Florida for about $180 billion at that point in time. The next slide recaps just how dramatic that inflation number was in 2022, how you can see how soft it was for criminally a decade or more, and then it finally came up. That driving inflation number at that point in time, the cost of everything going up substantially, in combination, as you look at the next graph, the cumulative global insured losses by peril, shows you a perfect storm brewing in 2022 going into 2023. You had higher inflation, everything cost more, and two, you had global cat losses increasing at an astronomical rate. The graph on the left of the insured losses, tropical cyclone in the blue line, that's your hurricanes. You can see just how dramatic those insured losses are. If you look at the green line next to it, the severe convective storms. Well, when I say that, that's mostly what I'm talking about is your thunderstorms, is your tornadoes, okay? And if anybody's turned on the TV within the last couple of years, you know that the tornadoes have gotten progressively worse. And you can see that in the second graph, the count of billion-dollar events. That green number has gone off the charts. And in the past, reinsurers, these global carriers that have this ability to do a lot of modeling, and they look at the world, not just the United States, but they look at it on a world basis. They got pretty good at being able to estimate just how many hurricanes they're going to have in a year. You know, Colorado State does a lot of analysis on it. It's a pretty good predictor. They can't tell you exactly where they're all going to hit, but they can tell you, we think we're going to have this many of this severity and so on and so forth. What the insurance world has really struggled with is the severe convective storms. They can't predict that. These storms come up, they don't know where they're going to hit. And with the prevailing global warming that we have going on, some of the effects of that are causing more of these convective storms to hit more into the Midwest areas, more populous areas than they did out in the plains states of Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Kansas. It's kind of shifted eastward. So with the more of these storms happening and the effects of them hitting more populous areas, with the cost of things going up, insurance has gone up accordingly. And so in 2023, we had when we went into our reinsurance renewal, the marketplace was in an absolute capacity crunch, predatory pricing. Reinsurers have a certain amount of money that they can apply for capital. And when they jack up the premiums, reduce the coverages, it turns into somewhat of a bidding war because people need insurance coverages. And they will pay the price to be able to do that. When we went into our renewal for 2023, our reinsurer came back and said, and as you look at this graph for the public entities, this blue line, you can see how flat our premium, this is how much the program paid for property reinsurance through all those years. See, it's very flat. And about the 22-23 policy year, it really started to change. When we got to the 23-24 policy year, our reinsurer for property came back and said, if you want to keep your $350,000 retention, which is a very low retention, which is what we had for a long period of time. A lot of pools had that low of a rate. They were going to want to increase our premium by 310%, $5.5 million. The board looked at these numbers at that point in time and said, we can't pass these kinds of increases on to our public entities. The board sits in the same seats you all sit in. Commissioner Duncan sat in that room and had to decide, how are we going to be able to deal with passing through $5.5 million of additional cost to the membership, knowing that the public entities are constrained in their abilities to adjust their budgets. And so what we had decided to do at that point is to take a higher retention. We consulted with the actuaries closely and set our retention at $10 million and got a 63% increase to that premium. But we had to absorb any losses within that $10 million range. Pretty dramatic change. The schools, on the next slide, were in about the same bucket. Theirs was going to go up almost $7 million, a 292% increase. And we did the same thing. We had both of those programs together. So we retained more of the exposure related to that. And that's what this blue graph on the next page is. You can see how flat our retention was for a number of years, and then in one policy year we had to go up to $10 million. And then it's dropped down since then. For our 24-25 reinsurance renewal, the pricing was still chaotic. The marketplace was all over the board. Profitability was returning, but it wasn't stable by any stretch. We were hoping to push from a $10 million retention down to $1 million with a rate stabilization. We didn't quite get there. We ended up with a $1 million retention with what they call a 2.5 plus ag on that. What does that mean? Essentially, it's insurance language that says if you have a large claim, you're on the hook for the first $3.5 million. So we weren't quite back to where we were hoping we could get back to. And so we got into the 25 reinsurance renewal. Now, I apologize if I hadn't already said this. Our reinsurance renewal for property is July 1. So it happened just a couple weeks ago. In fact, just a couple days ago, I should be saying. Okay? And we were working with our broker in that process. We were able to, as we went through it, the market's significantly more stable. Profitability has returned. When we go to the market, we look at both domestic reinsurers and foreign. So we're looking at Lloyd's of London syndicates, Bermuda, as well as domestic carriers. We found that the domestic carriers were more negotiable in the renewal that we were looking to have. And we were able to negotiate away the 2.5 plus ag and get a minor rate reduction. So all in all, good renewal. Still not back to where we once were, but the market may be quite a while before we ever return to those levels, if it ever returns to those. Challenges that we face ahead, tariffs, again, inflation potential, severe convective storms. When I did this presentation a couple weeks ago, we were already up to 820 tornadoes so far. So when you go home and you watch the news at night and you see just how devastating some of the floods, some of the tornadoes are being, especially the tornadoes, you got to think about how that could impact you. And I've talked to a fair number of public entities over the last couple of years, and that's where they usually, someone pipes up and says, why can't you find a reinsurer that only does Idaho, kind of a thing? And unfortunately, I can't. It's just not something in the existence. And then wildfire. It's on the talking tip of the tongue for my world. It's more actually being impacted in John Getty and Jeff's world related to personal lines, residential coverages. Premium component. I want to talk about this really brief. Premium breaks down for our world into essentially two components: rate times an exposure unit. Your exposure unit for property is your TIV, your total insured value. So that's adding up the value of all your property. Okay. Your rate is essentially a price that we come to for the cost to be able to pay for all the claims, reinsurance, and overhead costs, so on and so forth. You might multiply that rate by the exposure unit, and essentially it generates a premium in a most basic mathematical sense. There's more to it, but that is a main bottom line. For 2025, our premiums for the program average between a minimum of 6% and a maximum of 15%. Those numbers are significantly lower than what we've had to pass through to the membership over the last couple of years due to market conditions. I look at ICRIM as a shock absorber. We had to absorb a lot of the shock that we've seen over the last 2 years, but we can't absorb it all. No insurer can. And the things that we've experienced is not unique to ICRIM. Every insurance company out there has had to go through this market correction, and some are still grappling with that market correction that was going on. Our pricing and billing for the longest time under this old model is that we would collect your exposure data. So we collect your TIV and your payroll on a gross basis or on a total basis on March 1st. And then we start the process of calculating renewal quotes. And we release those usually in May for an October 1 policy renewal. This is really far out, okay, in a sense of a timeline. There's not a carrier out there that will usually give you a quote in May for a policy that renews 10/1. I can ask my insurance agent counterparts here, but my guess is that you would normally maybe get a quote within 30, 45 days, 60 days on the outside if you're really, really lucky and the carrier likes you. The problem with this was 7 months of property value changes occurring between March and October are not being captured in this pricing model. Now, this model had been our model for a long period of time, and we were able to operate with this model because our reinsurance costs were fairly low and stable. That's not the case anymore. When we add on property, our reinsurer bills us for that additional coverage. And so what we're looking at doing going forward with the new pricing model is we would still collect data on March 1st, still release quotes in May, but we're going to take another look at the exposure units on July 1st. If your exposure has gone up by more than $5 million in that period of time, we're going to have to revise your quote for your 10/1 renewal. And what we're going to do going forward is every quarter we're going to have a look back over that 90 days. And if your values have exceeded $5 million, we're going to have to provide an interim billing. Okay? This isn't much different than what you see in the commercial world. And again, the board has to kind of weigh the difference between being a public entity and a commercial world. If you added a car to your home policy, you get a bill for it right then and there when that policy came on. For us, we haven't been doing that with everybody. We would wait until your policy renewed and then try to get caught up at that point in time. Unfortunately, with the increasing costs related to this, it causes the members to have a double-digit increases once a year instead of interim billings as we went through the year. And so we felt that taking smaller bites at the apple, so to speak, as we go through the year as something that's more amicable for you and for us. So I wanted to give you all an update as far as how that process is going to be going forward for the interim billings. And with that, that was a very quick run through on what 25 is looking like as we go into this year. We've done the property reinsurance, our liability reinsurance will come up in October. And, you know, again, I didn't talk about any of that. Liability and coverages are, some of them lines of coverage are very difficult. The law enforcement continues to be a challenging line of coverage. Employment practices also is a line of coverage. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I'll be quiet and stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions? Well, it sounds like because we're in the reinsurance market, going to there, that we probably are lower risk compared to some of the other markets. And so we're paying for that risk premium in these other markets.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were in a cat-prone area, they would get charged significantly more than we do. Do we have cat exposure? Sure. We have
Cat being what?
polar vortex, flooding. What's that?
Cat meaning.
Oh, catastrophe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cat losses, catastrophe losses are more wide-scale losses, like what you're seeing, the tornadoes, the flooding, the hurricanes.
I mean, the problem with those is that you go back 60 years, we were a much more rural country. You know, a tornado didn't bother anyone. With all the growth, all the coastline being fully developed, any hurricane that hits the coast is going to have $1 billion worth of claims easily. You know, presumably, though, people are paying for that insurance so that there's more money coming in, too. It's not just that insurance companies are being hurt by these things, proportionately.
Well, the cost of repairs too has gone up significantly
Well,
since
that's
COVID.
the other thing is that, you know, we've been printing money
Yep.
off the chart since 2000, so that's going to increase the cost. And then, of course, the supply side inflation that we've seen in the last few years. So I guess with respect to this $5 million increment that you mentioned, which would trigger a reevaluation of the.
Interim billing, yes.
Yeah. Is that based on replacement cost or market value?
Replacement costs.
Replacement cost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what all your property is valued at, is replacement costs. So one of the things that I've been telling most of the public entities is they're going, well, that means it could impact our budget. And I'm going, yeah, it can. And it's going to take a little more due diligence on your part as you look at your projects that you're have in the pipeline. Additional properties that you're going to build or buy, so on and so forth. And thinking about, okay, that's going to come on at one point in time, is it going to come on, and then we're going to get a billing to correspond with that, and reaching out to us to get a quote for that. And a lot of people in the past, it's just a new way of doing it, because in the past they wouldn't think about it too much, and then they get the bill at the renewal policy, you know. And so now they're going to have it more interim in their budget.
Does that mean that with fuel prices, if they were to go down, because that's one of the largest drivers of replacement cost, does that mean that we actually could see our premium inch down? I mean, if it's going to be driven on replacement costs, right?
Well, I don't know if the fuel is a direct impact to inflationary costs for everything. Is your premium going to go down? Probably not. It's probably going to be stabilized going forward. You know, if you were to remove property off your books, say you got rid of a bunch of courthouses or something like that, then yeah, we would have to recalculate your premium based off of that. But my guess is that premiums will continue to go up. They just won't go up as dramatic as what we've seen in the last couple of years, unless something else unforeseen really starts to impact it.
Okay.
The marketplace for reinsurance has changed a lot. It's much more capitalized than it was at the 22-23 year. And like I said, it was truly a perfect storm of increasing claim costs and increased pricing for everything. I don't think, hopefully that we'll be seeing that again anytime soon, even if with some of the tariffs and stuff like that. But it's a variable out there.
Okay. Are we still going to go into executive session?
Yeah, if you want to hear about the claims specific to Kootenai County. We typically hear that once a year.
John?
Commissioner, if I may, John Getty for the record. A couple of things that I want to point out. I've suggested that the departments go through their mobile equipment. Mobile equipment is based on actual cash value. You might have a $400,000 piece of equipment that's only worth $200,000 now. And if we readjust those values to actual cash value, you're going to see some reduction against whatever you increase in the 5 million quarterly limit. We put on the Justice Building addition at $42 million, so that's going to have significant impact. And for county,
42 million? Oh, how did that number? We just paid 36.
that's the number I got from Jeff.
Okay, it's
Well, we just
30.
paid 36 million for the building, so how could it be gone up 6 million?
I guess I'll have to ask Jeff that, but that's the number I was given.
Okay.
I can reduce it if it's too much.
I think I would.
it's too much.
And the interim rate that I've been told, estimated at least, is going to be $2.52 per thousand. And that's, I believe, is an annual. So that's something that you can kind of plug into your budget. I've not seen a revised renewal premium yet for the county. But Tim says that's coming.
Yeah.
It's $2.52 per thousand
In
of
value.
value.
Correct, per thousand.
Insured value.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that said, I guess we'll go into executive session.
All right.
We'll take a motion.
Yes, and we'll handle item 6 as well while in executive session. I move we enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061I and 1A.
Second.
Commissioner Eberline,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye. Okay, it's 11:35. I'll take a motion to exit executive session.
Item 5, I move we exit executive session. Item 5, no decisions made. Item 6 is staff to proceed as discussed.
Second.
Commissioner Eberline?
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
Aye.
Chair Matari?
Aye, 11:36, meeting adjourned.